Hello and welcome to Train Signal. You're watching video number 7, Scripting with Microsoft Virtual Server. This is part of the Fast Track CBT Video Lab, Microsoft Virtualization, Virtual PC, and Server. In this video, we're going to talk about our scenario with the Blue Crab Food Company and learn how scripting is going to help them. Then we'll move on to the purpose of this video. I want you to know why it is we're talking about scripting in the first place. Next, we'll talk about the Virtual Server COM API, and we'll learn a little bit more about scripting with Virtual Server. Then we'll go into some scripts, how to shut down your virtual server, turn off your virtual server, start up your virtual server, and perform shutdown and startup on all virtual machines. So let's talk about our scenario with the Blue Crab Food Company. You need to create scripts to start up and shut down the Blue Crab Foods virtual servers. These scripts will be used by the backup client on the host server to shut down the virtual machines before backups start so it can back up those servers, then restart the servers after the backups. Now I know that you're probably no programmer, just like me, so good luck. But you'll need a little bit more than luck. You'll need some samples and some basic understanding of scripting inside Virtual Server. So let me tell you a little bit more about it. But first, let's talk about our purpose of video number 7, scripting with Microsoft Virtual Server. Now, the purpose of this is to give you an introduction to scripting and show you the basics of how it can be done. I know a lot of you might think, I don't need scripting, or I don't want to learn scripting because I'm not a programmer. I've never done scripting before. But let me assure you that it's pretty easy and it's really basic. And if you can copy some code samples that Microsoft or other people out on the internet have created, just modify some of the basics of those and use them, you'll be good to go, and you can automate some of your common tasks, help complete your backups, get your servers shut down, help create new virtual machines, all from scripts. So it's really not that hard. Let me show you. Now, what is the Virtual Server COM API? That's really what drives the scripting inside Microsoft Virtual Server. This COM API, an API is an application programmer's interface, and really it's an interface to an application or to the operating system that allows you to write scripts, outside programs, to talk to that application or operating system. So with Microsoft Virtual Server, you can script actions and information using VBScript, .NET, a form of C, or Visual Basic. Now, I recommend VBScript for beginners, and that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. Now, for basic VBScript reference, you can go to any one of these two links right here and learn more about VBScript. You can also go to the internet. I mean, you can go to Google and just type in VBScript, and you'll find some great introductions on how VBScript works. But even without an introduction on VBScript and even a basic knowledge of VBScript, I'm going to show you some scripts in this video that are going to work with Microsoft Virtual Server. Now, the good thing about Virtual Server, or I'm sorry, the good thing about VBScript is that it requires no editor. You just use Notepad. If you can open Notepad and type in some text or paste in some command examples, you can write a VBScript. Now, it's not case sensitive, and it supports COM objects. COM objects are, again, those objects that allow you to control applications or operating system functions. In this case, we're using the Virtual Server COM object that allows us to control Virtual Server using scripts. Now, inside VBScript, variables do not require a type. You don't, in programming, typically you have to say this is a number and its type is number, or this is a string and its type is string. With VBScript, they have a type called variant, and pretty much it supports everything. Now, scripts can be run from the Windows GUI or from the command prompt. Either way, you can have a text script that the output goes to the command prompt, or it can go to the Windows GUI. And really, that's the difference between WScript and CScript, and I'll show you those two here in just a second, is just where the output goes. Now, it's really easy to write a script. In fact, here's one of the classic, beginner scripts is WScript echo. So it sends it to Windows scripting, and it does an echo, and this is the echo we're going to put in. So let me show you how to make a Windows scripting VB script. If I copy this little example right here, I go to Start, I open up Run, and I open up Notepad. Now inside Notepad, I'm going to paste that in right there with a Control V. I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to Save As. I'm going to save it on my desktop, and I'm going to call it test.vbs. Now the VBS right there tells Windows that this is a VB script file. That's very important. It has to know that to run it. And you need to also change this to all file types, not a text. You don't want it saved as a text file. So I'm going to click Save, and there we go. We just made our first VB script. I'm going to close this out, minimize this, and I'm going to run our VB script, which is right there, test.vbs. If I double click on that, there we go. It beeps and it says, welcome to train signal. And you can see it's out. The application is Windows Scripting Host, or WSH. And it says OK. You click OK and it goes away. So we just made our first VB script. That's how easy it is. Now, of course, your VB scripts are going to get a little bit more complicated than that, but that just shows you how easy it is to make a VB script. All right. Now, I said that scripts are run from Windows Scripting Host, or which is called WScript or WScript, and also from CScript. So that's the command line script. So the difference in these really is, where do you want the output to go? Do you want the output to go to the command line? Do you want the output to go to the Windows graphical interface? Now, the three best resources that I can point you to get you what you need to know about scripting are right here. The first one is a book called The Rational Guide to Scripting, Virtual Server 2005. And it's available from rationalpress.com, that's the publisher, or you can get it on amazon.com. I'm sure you can find it other places on the internet. I bought mine off of Amazon, and with the Rational Guide to Scripting Virtual Server 2005, once you get it, you can register their book on their website, and then you can download all the examples that are used in the book. And those examples are, of course, customizable by you to shut down or start up your virtual servers, or create your own virtual networks, or modify your virtual disk, whatever it is you want to do in a scripted way. That book has the examples to do it. So to me, that's the #1 best place to go. And in fact, really, almost everything I learned about scripting, I learned from that book. So I highly recommend it. The next option is Microsoft Scripting Center, which is found at this URL right here. I'm going to open it up so we can take a look. All right, this is called the Script Repository for Virtual Server. And what it is it's free. It's a free repository of virtual server scripts. And the great thing about this one is, like I said, it's free. So all the scripts you'll find in here, you can take and modify, and you don't have to pay anything for. What is lacking in here, though, is knowledge. So it's full of scripting examples, but there's not a lot of explanation to really tell you what these scripts do. So like, for example, if I go in here to virtual machine, virtual server properties, you can see here's a list of all the different scripts that you can download to do different things with Microsoft Virtual Server. So here I can get a script called Create a Virtual Machine. Here's one called Delete a Virtual Machine. Here's Install Virtual Machine Additions. List the guest operating system information. List basic virtual machine information. Pause a virtual machine. Search for a virtual machine. Shut down a virtual machine. Start a virtual machine. Turn off. List virtual server host information. All kinds of stuff you can do here with virtual machine and virtual server properties. If I go back, there's more scripts here on virtual disk drives. Here's a script to add a DVD drive to a virtual machine. List virtual server floppy image type. What do we got here? Create a floppy image. Compact a virtual hard disk. Create a virtual server fixed hard disk. Let's look at that. It tells you at the start here the supported platforms. So what's this going to run on? It's going to run on Windows Server 2003. But really, it's running on Microsoft Virtual Server. So be careful with this here. Don't always believe this. So here's a little script that would create a Microsoft Virtual Server fixed hard drive. As you can see, it gives you the script, but it doesn't really help you understand why the script does what it does or how it does what it does. But it's a pretty basic script. So let's go back here. Let's look at some of the other options. Here's virtual server access rights and security. List current user virtual server access rights. Um, here's virtual server client information. List virtual server VMRC authenticators. List virtual server client control connection information. Here's virtual networks. Here's scripts to add a virtual network adapter to a virtual machine, modify a virtual network property, list virtual server DHCP information. So the DHCP server built into Microsoft Virtual Server, you can modify through these COM objects. So that's the Windows scripting repository for Virtual Server, all free scripts, some great examples. The next resource I want to show you is the Microsoft Virtual Server Programmer's Reference. Number 3 right here. This comes free with Microsoft Virtual Server, and you can easily access it by going to Start, Programs, Microsoft Virtual Server, and then the Virtual Server Programmer's Guide. If I click on that, it brings me to this help interface, and if you click on Contents, you can expand here all the different topics where it talks about the virtual server COM interface, the using it, the reference guide, remote control client, all sorts of good information. The only downside I found to this is that in looking at this, to me, this is mostly a reference guide. So it tells you all the different commands, but it doesn't, and it tells you what they do, but it really doesn't provide you a lot of examples and scripts on how to put them all together. It's not going to teach you VB script. It's just more of a reference guide. But it is a free reference guide that's included with Virtual Server, so it's a handy tool. All right, so that's the Microsoft Virtual Server Programmer's Reference. And I think once you had some scripting examples and a basic, review of scripting like you'll receive in this video, and then if you had, the examples from the Scripting Center or the examples from the Rational Guide, or even the basic examples from this video, if you just want to do a couple of the most basic things, the Programmer's Reference would be a good resource to go and look up and learn future commands. And then finally, don't forget the internet. If you go to the internet and you type in virtual server programming examples or VB script help or virtual server scripting, any of those things inside Google, you'll get a ton of examples that you can download from other people's websites as well. And just like any other programming language, virtual server scripting has its own way of doing things sometimes, and different people come up with different ways to do different things. So it's a good idea to go out to the internet and take a look at other people's scripts, and many of them, they just offer them free in the public domain, and you can copy them and use them for yourself or modify them for your own needs. So now let's go ahead and move on and take a look at the actual scripts. So here's a script to shut down and then another script to turn off a virtual machine. This right here is the script. And I took this script, both of these scripts actually, from the Microsoft scripting repository for Virtual Server. Those are in the public domain, so anybody can copy those and use them. And the only thing I modified in this script was the name of the virtual server right here. So I put in BC-WinXP1 as the name of the virtual server. So that's all I modified. And what this script does is it goes to the operating system itself, and it's like you going in there and clicking on shutdown and shutting down the virtual server. So it doesn't just turn it off like pulling the power in the middle of the server running some program or functioning. It actually does a graceful shutdown of the operating system. Now, the only catch I found with this right here, this script, is that it only works on Windows XP. I cannot get it to work on Windows 2003 Server. So maybe there's another modification that it needs to be made to get it to work on Windows 2003 Server. But at this point, it just works on Windows XP. So I put the name of the server in there, and if we run this script, you'll see that it does indeed shut down the operating system. Before we shut down the operating system, we're going to run the script over here to start up the operating system, and then we'll test shutting it down. So then there's turning off the virtual machine. This script right here is like pulling the power. It just pulls the power on the computer and it just shuts it down. So this Windows 2000 server in here, this was the default, but I can go in here and modify this with the name of my virtual server, and you could copy this and you could modify it with the name of your virtual server and be able to shut down your Windows XP workstation or turn off your virtual machine. So now let's look at the startup scripting. This is an example of a startup script, also taken from the Microsoft Virtual Server Scripting repository. So what this does is it starts up a virtual machine, just like powering it on. And all I did is I modified this right here, the name of the virtual server. So we put that in there and it'll start up our virtual server for us. So let me show you at this point how these scripts work. So first let's go and open up our virtual server administrative console. All right, and as you can see here, I have three virtual servers, our same three virtual servers from our Blue Crab Food scenario. And right now they're all powered off. You can see the status is off. So let's say I want to turn on Blue Crab Food WinXP1 server with a script. So I'm going to go back here to starting up. I'm going to copy this little script. Okay. I'm going to go and I'm going to open Notepad. There's Notepad there. I'll say OK. I'm going to paste in the script. And in your case, you would modify it here with the name of your virtual server. So if you go over here, see this name right here, BC-WinXP-1, you would modify it with the name of your virtual server. So we've already got the Blue Crab Food Windows XP server in here. So I'm going to go to File, Save As. I'm going to go to the desktop just for convenience. I'm going to change this from text files to all documents. And I'm going to call this test. Well, let's give it a more proper name. Startup WinXP1.VBS. Don't forget that .VBS for Visual Basic Script. So I click Save. I'm going to close that out. Let's minimize this. So here we have our script, Startup WinXP1. Okay, let's go back over here to our Client 1 status. I'll do a refresh just to show you that indeed all of these are turned off. Gonna change the size of this so we can see that. So if I double click on this, or I could go and I could run it from the command line, either way, it's going to start up this Windows XP computer. So I'm going to double click that and then go back over here and click refresh. You can see the status change from off to running. I'm going to click refresh again. And you get the little Windows XP screen thumbnail there. You can see down here, Blue Crab Food Win XP1 was started. So that's important. Shows us that the script actually worked. And there we go, we have a logon screen. So our startup script works. Now how about our shutdown script? If we go back here to shutdown, we have this shut down the OS, and I said this only worked on Windows XP, or at least in my experience, I've only been able to get it to work on Windows XP. If I copy this, minimize everything. I'm going to go to Start, Run, Open Notepad. I'm going to paste this in. Don't forget to change the name of your virtual server there if you want to use this on your own virtual machine. So I go to File, Save As. I'm going to change this to all files. And I'm going to call this shutdown winxp1.vbs. I'm going to put it on the desktop and say save. Close this out. And here's our shutdown WinXP1. So if I go back here, I click refresh, you can see our WinXP1 computer is still running. If I double click shutdown, click refresh, you can see here it's actually shutting down. Still says it's running. It'll take just a second. And just like when I shut down my Windows XP workstation, it takes a second to close everything. Log off, and there we go. It's turned off. So it's that easy to shut down and start up your virtual machines using scripts. You saw how easily we just copy those in a notepad, save them as a .vbs file, and then run them. You can also run these from a command line. So if I wanted to schedule something with the Windows scheduler from a command line, I could do that. So I'm going to go to Start. I'm going to run CMD. I'm going to CD into my desktop, do a dir. So I've got my scripts here, shut down and start up WinXP1. So the command line scripting interpreter is called cscript. So I'm going to type cscript space, and then I type start, and I just press tab and did the auto completion there, so I don't have to type the whole thing. And I'm just going to press enter. So it runs this script. It's using the COM object to talk to Microsoft Virtual Server and start the script. So if I go over here, you can see our Blue Crab Food WinXP1 computer is now running, thanks to the script. So it's that easy to run it either from the graphical interface or from the command line. And these scripts, obviously, they could be much more complicated. You could, if you got more familiar with VB you could, create a loop that would go in here and find each of the virtual servers, and then go through and shut down each one, and then it would come back and tell you the status of each one, that each one was shut down, and it could have little graphical boxes that popped up on the screen. So you can get very creative with this. So if I exit out of this, and let's go ahead and let's just run the shutdown. And that should be shutting down. There we go, shutdown. So let's minimize this and go back to our scripts. All right, so we tested the shutdown. We didn't test turning off. Let's test turning off a computer. So if I take this and I copy it, I'm going to go to Run, Start Notepad, paste this in. Let's run this on one of the Windows 2003 servers. So I'll type in the name of the server here. Have to make sure that the name is exactly correct. I'm going to say save as, turn off bc1.vbs. So here I have my turn off bc1. I need to make a script to start up bc1 first. So let's edit this one. I'll put in the name here, Blue Crab Food Win Server 1. I'll do File, Save As, and we'll call it Startup. Okay, let's change the file type here from text file to all. So I'll call it startup vc1.vbs. All right, so now we have turn off and we have start up right here. So first let's start up, and I'll go over here to our master status. There we go. Blue Crab Food Win Server 1 is running. You see down here in our events, it says Blue Crab Food Win Server 1 was started. Take just a second so you can see the screen here. There we go, Windows Server 2003. So now to stop it, I'm just going to turn it off. Let's go back here, and it's off. Turning off a server obviously takes a lot less time than shutting down the guest operating system. So let's minimize this. So we successfully tested turning off a virtual machine and shutting down the guest OS. Obviously, shutting down the guest OS is the preferred method because it gracefully shuts down the computer. However, turning off is going to work faster, and it's going to work immediately no matter what applications might be running. Then we tested our startup, and that worked both on Windows XP and on our servers 2003. Now let's look and see how we can bring everything we've learned together to make a more practical real-world script. In the case of myself, at my company, we had backup software that needed to back up the physical computer. So what we did to back up the physical host computer for all the virtual machines is we created a script to shut down those virtual machines before the backups, and then to restart the virtual machines after the backups. And the backup software actually had an area where you could put in a shutdown script and a startup script. So a script that would run before the backups to shut down the virtual machines, and a script that would run after the backups to start up the virtual machines. And that's because you don't want to back up the host computer with the virtual machines running, because you won't get all the data you need because the virtual machine VHD files are open, and the VSV files as well are open, and they can't be cleanly backed up. So you really need to shut those down or pause them so that you can back up the host computer and get a clean backup of the virtual clients. Now, of course, there's other ways to get backups of the virtual clients, even with them running. I've seen scripts where on the internet people have used undo disk, and they do a snapshot so that the snapshots are made, and even though the virtual servers are running, you get a clean snapshot of the virtual machine, and all the virtual machines are cleanly backed up. You could, of course, put your own backup client on each of the virtual machines. That's another way to do it. Just put a backup client on each virtual machine, and you get a full backup of the virtual machine, and then you put a backup client on the virtual host, and you get a full backup of that. That's another option. In this case, what we want to do is we want a script that will shut down all those virtual machines, and another script that will start up all those virtual machines. Now, as I said earlier, I'm no programmer, I'm no scripting guru. So all I did is I took our startup scripts, and I made one for each of my virtual servers. And then I took our shutdown scripts, and I made one for each of our virtual servers. And then we're going to combine it in a script, one for shutdown and one for startup. And then we'll give it a try. Of course, if you were better at scripting than I am, I'm sure you could do a for loop. You could do for virtual server in all the virtual servers, do this one action, shut them all down, one after the other. And I'm sure there is a way to do that. I just didn't explore that because, frankly, this is a little bit easier to just copy and paste the example. So here I have a script that will shut down all the virtual servers. And then here I have a script that will start up all the virtual servers. So all I have to do is copy this and go paste it into Notepad, save it as a VBS, and voila, I'm good to go. I can put that VBS script in my backup software and tell it, before you shut down all the virtual machine, or before you do a backup of the host computer, run this script to shut down all the virtual machines. And before you uh, complete the backup, when the backup's done, right at the end, run this script to start up all those virtual machines so they'll be ready for production in the morning. So let's try out the startup script first. I'm going to copy this. And by the way, if you'll notice, all I did is I inserted the, the names of the virtual machines at this point in each script. It's that easy. I didn't go into what all this other stuff does. I do notice here the most important thing is it does a startup on the object VM, and the object VM is my virtual machine here. Same thing on each one. So if I copy all that, I do run, I open Notepad, I paste this in, going to go to Save As, change the type to all files, and I'm going to call this startup all.vbs. Save that, close it out. Let's minimize this. So here's our startup all right there. If I go to client 1 status, okay, notice that they're all off right now. So I'm going to run the startup all, and let's go back here and refresh, and all 3 virtual machines are running. Very cool stuff. If you go to the log here, you should see that they were all started. WinServer 1 was started, Blue Crab Food. WinServer 2 was started. They're all running now. So if I minimize that, next let's create our shutdown script. And like I said, I've got it shutting down the guest OS inside WinXP, but on the Windows 2003 servers, I just have it turning off those servers. So if I go to Start, I go to Run, Notepad, paste this in. I'm going to do a Save As, change the type here, and I'm going to call it shutdown all.vbs. Save that, close it out, and let's minimize this. And here's my shutdown all.vbs script file. Let's go back here, let's check the status of my virtual servers. Looks like they're all booting up. Now for the shutdown of the guest OS to work inside Windows XP, Windows is going to have to actually be booted. I can't shut down the guest OS while it's still booting, or the guest OS isn't up, because the guest operating system isn't there to receive that command and process it. I can, however, turn off the virtual machines anytime I want. They don't have to be booted, or they could be in a blue screen crash state or whatever. You can see I'm booting up 3 servers all at the same time, so obviously this could take a minute. So before we go and shut down the virtual servers, we'll wait for those to boot up. And while we're waiting for those to boot up, I want to show you some important information about scripting inside the Microsoft Virtual Server interface. So if you scroll down here and you click on Server Properties, there's a section here called Virtual Server Scripts. I'm going to click on that. And currently it says that virtual server scripts are disabled, and you have to click here to enable these scripts. It's very important, if you're going to be working with scripts, that you come in here and you enable this. It says enable scripts attached to this server and enable scripts attached to virtual machines running on this server. So there's a difference. The server scripts do something on the whole server. The scripts on the virtual machines do something on the virtual machines. So I'm going to apply that, say OK. And now it says scripts are enabled. Now in general, this should really be turned on but in my experience, some scripts will sometimes work without it turned on. But if it's turned off and you run a script and it doesn't work, it's not going to tell you. Um, it'll tell you over in the master status on the event viewer, but the script won't actually tell you unless it's a very well written script that has some error controls on it to tell you, hey, sorry, scripting is disabled. You're going to have to go enable it. So we just enabled scripting. And if you scroll down here, you can see here are command line actions when if you want scripts to do certain things. So these scripts apply to the entire virtual server. So like, for example, the first one says command line action when the virtual server starts. Not a particular virtual server, the entire virtual server software. So whenever, say the computer starts and Microsoft Virtual Server is set to start automatically, say you put in a script here that would do something inside virtual server. Maybe it starts up all your virtual servers automatically. Maybe it uh, takes a snapshot or something of all your virtual servers. So in here you would put the actual command line to start up all .vbs. That's just an example. You would have to put the full path to the script in there. So then there's other scripts, when the virtual server stops, when any virtual machine is turned on, when any virtual machine is restored, when any virtual machine is turned off or saved, when any virtual machine is turned off and not saved, when any virtual machine is turned off within the guest environment, when any virtual machine is reset, when no heartbeat is detected from a virtual machine. That's the other thing. Virtual server and the COM objects can have heartbeats between the virtual servers and the virtual server, application whenever the virtual machine editions are installed. So you have to install those virtual machine editions inside the guest OS, and then you'll have this heartbeat going on. And what the heartbeat is there for is just to know that the virtual server or the virtual machine is alive and running. So know that that guest operating system is up and running. And if there's no heartbeat detected, meaning the guest operating system has stopped responding, then the virtual server can take action. So I could put some script in here that would reset or reboot, the operating system of a guest machine whenever no heartbeat is detected. So this is very useful if you have a guest operating system that might periodically, hang or get stuck on some application processing, and you just want to be able to automatically reboot that guest operating system. So you could put a script in here to turn it off and then turn it back on. Here's scripts here to do something whenever a virtual machine experiences a guest processor error, whenever there's low disk space on the physical computer, all sorts of options you can put in here. Down here is where you apply these scripts to the entire virtual server. Now inside each virtual machine, there are scripts that you can configure. So if I go into configure here, and then I go to configure an individual virtual machine, if you scroll down, there's a section here that says scripts. Notice here that it says scripts are currently disabled. If I click on that, even though we enabled scripts for the entire virtual server, the virtual machines, for them to run scripts, there's a security feature that those virtual machines must be running under a user account, not under the full administrator account. So to change this settings and be able to enable scripts on a per virtual machine basis, you have to go into the virtual machine general properties for each virtual machine, and you configure this virtual machine to run under a user account. So that's how that works. And then once that's enabled, then you can go back here to scripts, and you can actually use scripts on a per virtual machine basis. So there are the same types of scripts on a per virtual machine basis as there are on the entire virtual server, but they apply just to this single virtual machine. So that's how that works. Let's go back now to our master status. And sure enough, all of our virtual machines have booted up. They've all started. All right, so now let's run our shutdown all script. We got all our virtual machines up. Now let's shut them all down with our script. So if I double click on that, I go back here, I click refresh. You notice the two machines that were told to turn off, they immediately turned off. And then there's the Windows XP workstation here, which is gracefully shutting down the operating system. That'll take just a second, but we do know that that works. There we go. All three machines are off. So these scripts here, these could be very useful for backups when you want to shut down all virtual machines, back up the entire virtual server, and then restart all those virtual machines. Scripting can be very, very powerful, and there is just almost a unlimited number of different things you could do with scripting concerning virtual server. So we reached our conclusion of video number 7, scripting with Microsoft Virtual Server. And before I review what we've learned in this video, I want to point out one more time, if you want to learn more about scripting with Virtual Server, I highly recommend a couple different sources. Let me go back here to those sources and point them out again. The first one is the Rational Guide to Scripting with Virtual Server 2005. I don't get any commission for selling that, but I just highly recommend it as a very good book for scripting with Virtual Server. In fact, it's the only book that I've found that just covers scripting with Virtual Server, and it's got some great command examples. Then there's the Microsoft Scripting Center with lots of great examples for scripting. And before I go, let me show you a couple examples of scripting that are taken from the Rational Guide to Scripting with Virtual Server. These are more advanced scripts, and they show you, really what the power is of scripting. I downloaded these examples from the Rational Guide to Scripting with Virtual Server's website. These are the VB script examples. They also have scripting examples with C and .NET. But if I open these up, these point to the different chapters. Let's go to one of the more advanced chapters. And here I'm going to edit these scripts. And this script has to do with virtual networks. So it can go in and create the private virtual network, create the public virtual network. So basically, it's creating virtual networks, and in the end, it tells you the operation was complete. So there's examples of creating virtual networks. Here's another example of creating virtual networks. So chapter 8, that must be the virtual network chapter. If I go in here to chapter 7, it shows me how to create a dynamically expanding hard disk. Create a new VHD, convert the VHD to a fixed size VHD. So here they're compacting VHDs, they're converting VHDs, and creating VHDs. In this example, let's see, they're creating a new virtual machine, creating 2 new virtual hard disks. You can tell what they're doing here with the comments. The comments have a little apostrophe. The comments have a little apostrophe there to tell you this is a comment. So here they're creating new virtual hard disks, new virtual folder paths. They're attaching the hard disk. They're adding a SCSI controller. They're attaching a SCSI disk, and it tells you the operation is complete. Just a lot of examples of things you can do with virtual server scripting. Here's some examples from the third chapter. These can go in and tell you the name of the server, the uptime of the server. This one is a very cool example. It's got a for next loop. So it says for each virtual machine, echo the name of the virtual machine. Let's try this out. If we close this, if I double click this, so it goes through each of the virtual machines and it tells me the virtual machine name is BC WinXP1. I say okay. Tells me the next one. The name is Blue Crab Food Win Server 1. Tells me the next one. I say okay, and the script is complete. So just an example of a for next loop, and you should be able to take that type of code and combine it maybe with the backup startup and shutdown code to create a for next loop to shut down each of the virtual machines on your computer, no matter what their names are. That way you don't have to go in and manually type in the names. So just some ideas of ways the scripts could be combined to make things easier or make things more verbose. You could create log files out of the scripts so that you know exactly when the virtual servers were shut down. You could put in some error handling in case there was a problem. You could put in some checking to make sure the servers really were shut down. just some more advanced scripting examples. And again, those examples are downloads that I downloaded because I bought the Rational Guide to Scripting with Microsoft Virtual Server. Just something to go and take a look at if you're interested in learning more about scripting with Virtual Server. And of course, there's always the Microsoft Scripting repository for Virtual Server. It has tons of free examples in there. So in this video, we helped out the Blue Crab Food Company by creating some shutdown and startup scripts for their backup process. These scripts would shut down all their virtual servers and then restart all their virtual servers. We learned about the VSCOM API and how it's a object that allows us to write VB scripts or other types of scripts that will interface with Microsoft Virtual Server functions, essentially. Things that we want to do inside Virtual Server. We can monitor the heartbeat of those virtual servers that have the Virtual Server editions installed, and if one of them hangs or freezes, we can restart the virtual server automatically. We can create virtual networks, create virtual disks. We can do all sorts of things using scripting using this Virtual Server COM API. It's very powerful. We learned how easy it is to create VB scripts. You just copy and paste it into Notepad, save it as a .vbs file, and you can run it either from the GUI interface or from the command line. So with that, we've reached the end of video number 7, Scripting with Microsoft Virtual Server. Thank you very much.